Sarah Chen walked through the massive crystal halls of the council station. The walls sparkled with light from the neutron star outside. She had been Earth's main representative for 5 years now. Each day brought new challenges, but she loved her job. The Galactic Council was huge. 12 different alien species worked together here. They made decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. Humans had joined the Council 200 years ago. Back then, Earth was small and weak compared to the other races. Now things were different. Humans had proven themselves useful. They built better fusion reactors than anyone else. Their doctors could cure diseases that had killed aliens for thousands of years. When other species fought each other, humans often helped them make peace. Sarah stopped at a viewing window. The council station was enormous. It held millions of beings from across the galaxy. The Vorthak could read minds with their tentacle-like heads. The Zephyrians shared one giant group mind across their entire species. The architects looked like living crystals and built cities that lasted forever. Each species was older than humanity. Some had traveled between stars when humans still lived in caves. They had knowledge and technology that amazed human scientists. But lately, Sarah noticed something troubling. The other council members seemed angry about human success. At today's meeting, Sarah presented Earth's latest proposal. Humans wanted to expand into new star systems along the border regions. These areas had good planets for farming and mining. Several human colonies needed more space for their growing populations. The Vorthak representative Zithara clicked his tentacles together. This meant he was annoyed. Humans always want more territory, he said through his translator device. Your species arrived yesterday in galactic terms, yet you demand the same rights as elder races. Sarah kept her voice calm. We ask for the same opportunities given to other council members. Our population grows quickly. We need room to expand peacefully. The architect delegate made a sound like breaking glass. Her crystal body flashed red with anger. Peaceful expansion? Your military builds new ships every month. Your colonies spread faster than any species in council history. We follow all council rules about expansion, Sarah replied. Our military exists only for defense. We have never attacked another council member. That was true. Humans had fought many wars among themselves throughout history. But since joining the council, they followed the rules carefully. Earth's leaders knew they were surrounded by much older and stronger species. Peace and cooperation were the only smart choices. The Zephyrian speaker's voice buzzed like a swarm of insects. The collective remembers when humans first arrived. You were grateful for our guidance. Now you challenge our wisdom. Sarah felt frustrated but hid it well. Diplomacy required patience. We are still grateful for everything the council taught us. But we have also contributed much. Our fusion technology powers half the stations in council space. Our medical advances saved millions of Vorthak lives during the plague of 2381. Elder Korth, the oldest council member, raised his forearms for silence. His species, the Dominari, had ruled parts of the galaxy for 10,000 years. When he spoke, others listened. The human contribution is recognized, Korth said slowly, but contribution does not equal wisdom. Your species is young and impulsive. Perhaps expansion should wait until you mature further. The word stung Sarah. Humans had been council members for 2 centuries. They had proven themselves again and again. Yet the elder species still treated them like children. After the meeting, Sarah walked to the human section of the station. Here, Earth's diplomats, scientists, and security officers worked around the clock. The human areas looked different from other parts of the station. They were warmer, with plants and artwork that reminded people of home. Commander Jake Morrison met her in the security office. He was head of the human military presence on the station. His job was officially ceremonial, but Sarah knew he kept track of everything that happened. How did it go? Jake asked. Not well, Sarah admitted. They're getting more hostile about our expansion request. I think some of them want to deny it completely. Jake frowned. He was a career military officer who had seen action in the border conflicts of the 2370s. Any idea why they are pushing back so hard? We are not asking for anything crazy. Sarah sat down and rubbed her temples. A headache was building behind her eyes. I think they see us as a threat now. When we first joined, we were weak and grateful. We followed their lead on everything. Now we have our own ideas and the power to pursue them. Maybe that is not a bad thing, Jake said carefully. Earth has been taking orders from the Council for 200 years. Perhaps it is time we stood up for ourselves. Careful, Commander, Sarah warned. That kind of thinking could get us in serious trouble. We are one species among 12. If they decide we are too dangerous, they could unite against us. Jake nodded, but his expression remained troubled. I understand the politics, Ambassador, but my job is to think about security. I have been watching the other species build up their fleets. Military exercises near human space have increased threefold in the past year. That was news to Sarah. Why wasn't I told about this? Intelligence reports go to Earth first, Jake explained. I assume the Council knows about it too. Maybe that's why they are being difficult about expansion. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's air conditioning. Were the other species preparing for conflict? The idea seemed impossible. The Council had kept peace for thousands of years. War between member species was unthinkable. But humans had learned hard lessons about what was unthinkable throughout their history. Just because something had never happened did not mean it never would. The next day brought another council session. This time, all 12 species had their full delegations present. Sarah could feel tension in the massive chamber. The air recyclers hummed louder than usual, working to handle the stress pheromones from various species. Elder Korth stood at the center podium. His ancient voice carried clearly through the translation systems. The Council has reviewed humanity's expansion request. We have also discussed concerns about human activities in recent years. Sarah's stomach dropped. This did not sound like a normal rejection. Humans have become too aggressive in their growth, Korth continued. Your military buildup concerns many member species. Your expansion threatens the stability that has kept peace for millennia. The Vorthok representative added his thoughts. Human behavior patterns show increasing independence from Council guidance. This is dangerous for galactic harmony. Sarah stood to respond, but Korth gestured for silence. The Council has decided that humanity requires additional oversight. Your species will reduce military forces by 50% within 6 months. All expansion beyond current borders will cease immediately. Council observers will monitor human activities to ensure compliance. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Sarah felt like she had been punched in the stomach. This was not just a rejection of their expansion request. It was an attack on human sovereignty. This is completely unacceptable, Sarah said firmly. Humans have violated no Council laws. We have the same rights as any member species. Rights come with responsibilities, the architect delegate replied. Young species must learn proper behavior before gaining full privileges. Sarah looked around the chamber. Not one species spoke in support of humanity. Even their traditional allies remained silent. The elder races had clearly planned this together. As she left the council chamber, Sarah felt something she had never experienced in her diplomatic career. For the first time, she truly understood why humans had once been warriors before they became peacemakers. Some things could not be solved with words and compromise. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson too. Sarah Chen barely slept that night. The Council's demands kept running through her mind. Reduce military forces by half. Stop all expansion. Accept Council observers watching everything humans did. It was like being put in prison without committing any crime. The next morning brought worse news. Commander Morrison arrived at her office with a datapad full of intelligence reports. His face was grim. Ambassador, you need to see this, he said, sliding the pad across her desk. Our scouts report massive fleet movements across Council space. Every member species is mobilizing their military forces. Sarah read the reports with growing alarm. Vorthak battlecruisers were leaving their home systems. Zephyrian hive ships were gathering at strategic points. Even the normally peaceful architects had activated their ancient war constructs. How many ships are we talking about? She asked. Conservative estimate? 15,000 vessels minimum, Jake replied. And that's just what we can see. There could be twice that number hiding in dark space. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she set down the datapad. 15,000 ships was enough to destroy every human world 3 times over. Earth's entire fleet consisted of maybe 800 vessels. This has to be a coincidence, she said, though she didn't believe it herself. Maybe they're preparing for military exercises. Jake shook his head. Military intelligence doesn't think so. The positioning is all wrong for exercises. These fleets are taking up blockade positions around human space. Before Sarah could respond, her communication system chimed with an urgent message. The Council requested her immediate presence for an emergency session. Jake offered to come with her, but she refused. Whatever was about to happen, she needed to face it as Earth's representative. The council chamber felt different when Sarah arrived. Instead of the usual scattered seating, all 11 non-human species sat together on one side. The human delegation found themselves alone on the opposite side. The message was clear: us versus them. Elder Korth did not waste time with normal procedures. He stood immediately and activated the chamber's main display. Star charts appeared showing the positions of council fleets around human territory. Humans of Earth, Korth began, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of authority. The council has made its final decision regarding your species' future in galactic civilization. Sarah felt ice in her veins. Final decision? This sounded like much more than additional oversight. Your species has proven unable to accept proper guidance from your elders, the Vorthak representative added. Human aggression threatens the peace we have maintained for millennia. The Zephyrian collective mind spoke next, their buzzing voice filled with certainty. The collective has analyzed human behavioral patterns. Your species cannot be trusted with unrestricted freedom. Sarah stood up slowly. What exactly are you proposing? Elder Korth's 4 eyes fixed on her with ancient coldness. Humanity will surrender all military vessels to council authority within 72 hours. Human colonies will be placed under protective custodianship, managed by council forces. Earth itself will accept a permanent council governor to oversee human activities. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. They were talking about the complete subjugation of humanity. Not partnership, not oversight, total control. This is insane, Sarah said, her diplomatic training finally breaking down. Humans have committed no crimes. We have followed every council law and regulation for 200 years. The architect delegate's crystal body flashed with angry red light. Your expansion requests prove hostile intent. Your military buildup threatens neighboring systems. Your independence from council guidance shows dangerous thinking. What you call independence, we call basic rights, Sarah shot back. Every species in the council maintains its own military. Every species expands when they need more territory. Why should humans be different? Because you are young and reckless, Elder Korth replied. Because your species has a history of violence that concerns us all. Because the council has decided this is necessary for galactic peace. Sarah looked around the chamber at faces both alien and familiar. She had worked with many of these beings for years. She had considered some of them friends. Now they stared at her with the cold calculation of conquerors. You have 72 hours to comply, the Vorthak representative said. Our fleets are already in position around human space. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. Appropriate force? Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. You're threatening to attack civilian populations if we don't surrender our right to exist as a free species? We prefer cooperation, Elder Korth said mildly. But the Council's decision is final. Humanity will accept guidance willingly, or guidance will be imposed. Sarah felt something break inside her chest. For 2 centuries, humans had tried to be good neighbors. They had shared their technology, helped solve conflicts, and followed council rules even when those rules seemed unfair. They had chosen cooperation over confrontation at every opportunity, and this was their reward. Slavery dressed up as protection. I need to consult with Earth before giving any response, Sarah said carefully. Of course, Elder Korth agreed. You have 72 hours. We suggest you use that time wisely. As Sarah left the chamber, she could hear the other species already discussing how to divide up human territory. The Vorthak wanted the mining systems. The Zephyrians claimed the agricultural worlds. The architects debated which human technologies would be most useful. They were carving up humanity like it was already dead. Sarah returned to the human section of the station and immediately called an emergency meeting. Every human on the station gathered in the main conference room. Diplomats, scientists, security officers, and support staff all crowded together. They want us to surrender everything, Sarah announced without preamble. Our fleets, our colonies, our independence, everything. In return, we get to live as subjects under council oversight. The room exploded into angry voices. Some demanded immediate resistance. Others argued for negotiation. A few suggested selective compliance to buy time. Commander Morrison stood up and the room gradually fell silent. Everyone knew he spoke for the military perspective. I've been in contact with Earth Command throughout this crisis, he said. Our leaders have been preparing for this possibility for longer than any of us realized. Sarah stared at him. What do you mean? Jake's expression was carefully neutral. Let's just say that human leadership has learned from history. We hoped for the best with the council, but we planned for the worst. What kind of plans? Sarah asked, though part of her was afraid to know. The kind that means 72 hours might be enough time after all, Jake replied. Earth wants you to deliver a message to the council tomorrow. Tell them humanity needs time to consider such a momentous decision. Ask for a week to prepare our response. Sarah felt confused. Jake, we don't have a week. They have 15,000 ships surrounding human space. What possible response could Earth be preparing? Morrison smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, Sarah saw hope in his eyes. Ambassador, with respect, you've spent your career believing that diplomacy was humanity's greatest strength. You're about to learn what our greatest strength actually is. That night, Sarah sent the message to Earth requesting permission to ask for more time. The response came back within an hour. It was signed by the President of Earth herself. Tell the Council we need 1 week to prepare our response to their generous offer. Be polite, be diplomatic, but buy us that time. And Sarah, when this is over, the galaxy is going to remember why humans spent most of their history fighting wars instead of avoiding them. As Sarah prepared for the next day's council session, she wondered what her leaders had planned. Earth's military was strong for a human force, but it was tiny compared to the Council's combined fleets. What could possibly happen in 1 week that would change the balance of power? She was about to find out that sometimes the most dangerous species in the galaxy was the one that had spent 2 centuries convincing everyone it was peaceful. The council session the next day was smaller than usual. Only the main representatives attended, along with their security details. Sarah noticed that several species had brought more guards than normal. Everyone seemed tense. Elder Korth looked impatient when Sarah requested additional time. His forearms moved in agitation as she spoke. The council has made its decision, he said firmly. What requires further discussion? Sarah used every diplomatic skill she had learned over the years. She spoke about the complexity of the decision. She mentioned the need to prepare human populations for such major changes. She talked about the logistics of transferring military assets safely. 7 days, she concluded. That's all we ask. Surely the Council can grant humanity 1 week to prepare for such a momentous transition. The species representatives looked at each other. Sarah could see them communicating through various means. The Vorthak used subtle tentacle movements. The Zephyrians shared thoughts directly through their collective mind. The architects passed information through light patterns in their crystal bodies. Finally, Elder Korth nodded slowly. 7 days is acceptable. But understand this. When that time expires, compliance is no longer optional. Our fleets will enforce the Council's will. Sarah thanked them politely and left the chamber. As she walked back to the human section, she tried to figure out what Earth could possibly do with 1 week. The math was simple and brutal. The Council had overwhelming numbers and superior technology. No amount of human determination could overcome those odds, unless her leaders knew something she didn't. The answer came 3 days later. Sarah was reviewing supply reports when Commander Morrison burst into her office. His face was excited and terrified at the same time. Ambassador, you need to see this, he said, activating the wall display. Earth just sent new orders. We're implementing something called Operation Exodus. Sarah had never heard that name before. What's Operation Exodus? Jake pulled up a series of documents on the screen. Sarah read them with growing amazement. Operation Exodus was a complete evacuation plan for every human civilian in Council space. Not just Earth, every colony, every station, every settlement. This is impossible, Sarah said after reading the details. There are 47 human colonies in Council territory. Billions of people. You can't evacuate that many civilians in 4 days. According to these orders, we can, Jake replied. Transport ships are already moving into position. The evacuation begins in 6 hours. Sarah felt like the universe had tilted sideways. Where are we supposed to take billions of people? There aren't enough ships in the human fleet to move that many civilians. Jake's smile was grim. That's where it gets interesting. According to Earth Command, we have a lot more ships than our official records show. Over the next 4 days, Sarah watched something that should have been impossible. Human civilians began disappearing from Council space with incredible efficiency. Massive transport ships appeared seemingly out of nowhere to evacuate entire colonies. The ships used technology Sarah had never seen before, drives that moved faster than anything in the official fleet specifications. The council noticed, of course. Their monitoring stations tracked the evacuation activity. But when they demanded explanations, Sarah could honestly say she knew as little as they did. "Your people are leaving?" the Vorthak representative asked during an emergency session. "It appears so," Sarah replied carefully. "Earth Command is implementing some kind of evacuation protocol." Elder Korth's voice carried dangerous anger. "This was not part of our agreement. The Council requires human populations to remain in place for orderly transition." "With respect, Elder Korth, the Council demanded surrender, not cooperation," Sarah pointed out. "Perhaps human leadership decided that compliance would be easier without civilian populations to worry about." The truth was more complex than Sarah could say publicly. According to the intelligence reports Jake shared with her, humanity wasn't just evacuating, they were vanishing. Human military installations shut down and disappeared overnight. Defense platforms went dark. Even small research stations simply stopped responding to communications. It was like the entire human presence in council space was fading away. On the 6th day, Sarah received new orders from Earth. She was to deliver one final message to the council before the deadline expired. The message was short, but it made her hands shake as she read it. The final council session was tense. All 11 alien species attended with full delegations. Their military advisors crowded the chamber's observation areas. Everyone wanted to witness humanity's surrender. Sarah stood at the central podium and looked around the chamber. These beings had been her colleagues for years. Some had been friends. Now they watched her with the cold satisfaction of predators who had cornered their prey. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began formally, "I bring Earth's final response to your ultimatum." Elder Korth leaned forward eagerly. "We trust humanity has chosen wisdom over resistance." Sarah took a deep breath and activated the chamber's main display. Instead of surrender documents, the screen showed a star map of council space. Every human colony, station, and military installation was marked in blue. As the council watched, the blue markers began disappearing one by one. Earth's response is simple, Sarah continued as the display updated in real time. "We reject your demands completely. Humanity will not surrender our freedom, our fleets, or our future to alien oversight." The chamber erupted in angry voices. The Vorthak representative's tentacles writhed in fury. The Zephyrian collective buzzed with outrage. Even the normally calm architects flashed with brilliant warning colors. Elder Korth raised his arms for silence. "This is madness. You cannot resist the combined might of the Council. Your fleets will be destroyed. Your worlds conquered." Sarah smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several aliens step back instinctively. "You're welcome to try, Elder Korth, but first you'll have to find us." As she spoke, the last blue markers vanished from the star map. In less than a week, humanity had completely evacuated council space. 47 colonies, hundreds of stations, billions of people, all gone without a trace. "Where did they go?" the architect delegate demanded, her crystal body pulsing with confused colors. "Away," Sarah replied simply. "Far enough away that your fleets will never find us. Far enough away that we'll never have to listen to threats from species who mistake age for wisdom." Elder Korth's voice carried 10,000 years of authority, but for the first time Sarah heard uncertainty beneath it. "You cannot simply disappear. The galaxy is not infinite. Our scouts will locate your new settlements." Sarah began walking toward the chamber exit. As she moved, Commander Morrison and the rest of the human delegation fell in step behind her. Their movements were precise and military. "You're welcome to try," she said without turning around. "But consider this. For 200 years, humanity has shared our best technology with the Council. Our fusion reactors, our medical advances, our agricultural techniques. What makes you think we shared everything?" She paused at the chamber entrance and looked back one final time. "You wanted to put humanity in a cage. Instead, you've set us free. This galaxy isn't big enough for both your arrogance and our ambition." As the human delegation left the chamber, Sarah could hear the alien species already arguing among themselves. Some demanded immediate pursuit. Others wanted to negotiate. A few suggested that maybe they had made a terrible mistake. They had. But they wouldn't understand just how terrible until it was far too late. Walking through the council station's corridors for the last time, Sarah felt something she had never experienced as a diplomat. For the first time in her career, she wasn't trying to prevent a war. She was preparing to win one. Behind them, The species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia began to understand that they had just made enemies of the most dangerous thing in the universe, humans with nothing left to lose. 6 months passed after humanity vanished from Council space. Elder Korth stood in his private chambers aboard the Council's flagship, staring at reports that made no sense. The greatest military minds of 11 species had spent half a year searching for the missing humans. They had found nothing, not one hidden colony, not one secret base, not even wreckage from their evacuation ships. It was as if humanity had simply stopped existing. "This is impossible," the Vorthak military commander, General Zethtar, insisted during the morning briefing. His tentacles writhed with frustration. 47 colonies cannot disappear without leaving traces. Billions of beings cannot vanish into empty space. The Zephyrian collective had dedicated an entire hive mind to the search problem. Their representative's voice buzzed with electronic certainty. "The collective has analyzed every possible hiding place within 300 light-years of former human territory. No significant human presence detected." Admiral Kassara of the Architect Fleet added her own analysis. Her crystal body pulsed with confused yellow patterns. "Our long-range sensors can detect energy signatures across half the galaxy. Human fusion reactors have distinctive readings. We should have found something by now." Elder Korth studied the holographic displays floating around his command center. The search area kept expanding as Council fleets pushed deeper into unexplored space. Still nothing. It was like humanity had learned to hide from the laws of physics themselves. "Perhaps they fled beyond the galactic rim," suggested General Zethtar, "into the dark space between galaxies." "Impossible," Admiral Kassara replied. "No species has technology capable of intergalactic travel. The energy requirements alone would be beyond anyone's capabilities." Elder Korth was beginning to suspect that the Council had seriously underestimated human technology. For 2 centuries, humanity had seemed content to share their advances openly. Medical techniques, fusion improvements, agricultural innovations, all freely given to Council members. But what if that had only been their peaceful technology? What if humans had kept their military advances secret? The answer to his questions came 3 days later, in the worst possible way. Commander Veltan was patrolling the former human colony of New Geneva when his sensors detected something impossible. A human ship had just appeared in system, seemingly from nowhere. Not from hyperspace, just materialized out of empty space like it had always been there. "This is Veltan to Fleet Command," he reported, trying to keep excitement out of his voice. "I have contact with a human vessel. Single ship. Unknown configuration." The response came immediately from Admiral Kassara. "Capture that ship intact. We need information about human capabilities and locations." Veltan moved his squadron into intercept formation. 6 Architect crystalline fighters approached the lone human vessel. It was smaller than expected, maybe 200 meters long. The design was unlike anything in Council databases. "Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender immediately," Veltan broadcast. "Comply or face destruction." The human ship's response surprised him. Instead of surrendering or trying to flee, it broadcast a simple message back. "Tell the Council that Captain Torres sends his regards." Then the human ship opened fire. What happened next would be studied by military strategists for decades. The human weapons cut through Architect crystal hulls like they were made of paper. Energy beams that shifted frequency faster than defensive systems could adapt. Projectile weapons that phased through armor and exploded inside ship cores. In less than 30 seconds, 5 of Veltan's fighters were destroyed. His own ship barely escaped, and only because the human vessel seemed more interested in sending a message than achieving total victory. "This is impossible," Veltan reported to his superiors. "No single ship should have that much firepower. Their weapons are beyond anything in our databases." Admiral Kassara's crystal body flashed angry red when she received the report. "One ship destroyed 5 of our fighters? What kind of weapons were they using?" "Unknown technology," Veltan replied shakily. "They seemed to shift weapon types faster than our computers could track. Energy beams, projectiles, something that looked like controlled gravity fields. It was like fighting 5 different ship types at once." The incident at New Geneva was just the beginning. Over the next month, similar attacks occurred across former human territory. Always single ships appearing from nowhere, always overwhelming local council forces before vanishing again. Always leaving the same message: "Greetings from Captain Torres." The pattern was clear and terrifying. Humans weren't hiding in some distant galaxy. They were here, invisible, watching every move the Council made. Worse, their technology had advanced far beyond anything Council intelligence had predicted. Elder Korth called an emergency session of all military commanders. The meeting took place on the Council's most secure station, protected by layers of shields and sensor networks. If humans were watching, at least this conversation would be private. Report, Korth commanded as the holographic images of 11 military leaders appeared around the conference table. General Zethtar spoke first. Human raids have intensified. They hit 3 supply convoys last week, capturing cargo ships intact. We still cannot predict where they will appear next. What about their technology? Korth asked. Our scientists should have analyzed the weapon signatures by now. Admiral Kasara's crystal form flickered with uncertainty. That's the problem, Elder. The weapons seem to use principles we don't understand. Matter-energy conversion beyond our theories. Gravity manipulation on scales we thought impossible. They've made advances we cannot comprehend. The Zephyrian Collective added their analysis. The Collective has studied human attack patterns. They demonstrate knowledge of our weaknesses that should not exist. Zephyrian hive ships are vulnerable to specific psionic frequencies. Humans are using exactly those frequencies in their attacks. That made Elder Korth's blood run cold. Zephyrian psionic vulnerabilities were some of the most closely guarded secrets in Council space. How could humans know about them? They're not just attacking randomly, General Zethtar continued. Every raid targets specific Council weaknesses. They hit Vorthok supply lines during our molting season when we're most vulnerable. They attack architect construction sites using harmonics that shatter crystal matrices. It's like they've studied us for centuries. Elder Korth realized with growing horror that maybe they had. Humans had been Council members for 200 years. They had participated in military exercises, shared data, observed every aspect of alien society. What if they had been preparing for this war since the day they joined? What about our counterattacks? Korth asked desperately. Surely we can track their ships back to their bases. That's the worst part, Admiral Kasara replied. They don't retreat to bases. They simply vanish. Our best theory is some kind of dimensional technology that lets them exist outside normal space. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. An enemy that could appear anywhere, strike without warning and disappear without a trace. An enemy that knew all their weaknesses and had technology far beyond their ability to counter. How many ships are we talking about? Elder Korth asked, though he feared the answer. Unknown, General Zethtar admitted. We've identified at least 50 different human vessels from attack patterns. But if they can hide entire colonies, their fleet size could be enormous. Elder Korth stared at the tactical displays showing human raid locations. Red markers scattered across Council space like a disease. Each mark represented not just a military defeat, but a failure of understanding. They had completely misjudged humanity's capabilities. Recommendations? He asked finally. The military commanders looked at each other uncertainly. These were beings who had conquered star systems and commanded fleets for centuries. Now they seemed lost. We could try negotiating, suggested the Zephyrian representative. Perhaps humans would accept some kind of peace agreement. On what terms? Admiral Kasara asked bitterly. They hold all the advantages now. Why would they negotiate when they can simply take whatever they want? Elder Korth closed his 4 eyes and tried to think. The Council had made this situation by threatening humanity with slavery. Now those same humans had become an invisible enemy with superior technology and intimate knowledge of Council weaknesses. The irony was bitter. In trying to cage humanity, they had instead freed the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. And that predator was now hunting them with the patient skill of a species that had spent millions of years learning how to kill efficiently. The worst part was knowing that this was probably just the beginning. If humans could hit and run with single ships, what would happen when they decided to stop playing games and bring their full military might to bear? Elder Korth was afraid they were about to find out. 2 years after humanity's disappearance, the galaxy looked very different. Elder Korth stood in what used to be the Council chamber, but most of the seats were empty now. The great alliance that had kept peace for thousands of years was falling apart. The Zephyrian Collective had withdrawn from Council space entirely after human raids destroyed 3 of their hive ships. The loss of those ships meant the death of millions of linked minds. The collective's trust in the Council's ability to protect them was completely broken. The Vorthak had signed a separate peace treaty with humanity just last month, after human forces captured their home system for 3 days before withdrawing without cause. The Vorthak leadership decided that continued resistance was pointless. They were now human allies sharing intelligence and resources. 5 other species had followed similar paths. When faced with a choice between the failing Council and accommodation with humanity, they chose survival. Admiral Kessera materialized her crystal form next to Korth's command chair. Her color patterns were dim and defeated. "Elder, we've received another communication from the humans." Korth's forearms moved wearily. "What do they want this time?" "The same thing they've wanted for 6 months, Kessera replied. "Complete surrender of all remaining Council forces and dissolution of the Council authority structure." Korth laughed bitterly. "And in return, they guarantee safe passage to our home systems and non-interference in our internal affairs, provided we cause no future trouble for human interests." It was the same offer humans had made repeatedly. Surrender completely, and they would be allowed to exist peacefully in their own space, continue fighting and face total destruction. The choice was simple, but Korth's pride made it impossible to accept. "What about our remaining allies?" he asked. "The Dominari fleet is down to 200 ships after last week's battle," Kessera reported. "The Hagari lost their primary shipyards to human sabotage yesterday. The Feltar are requesting permission to negotiate separately." Korth stared at the tactical display showing the current state of the war. Red markers indicated human-controlled territory, which now included most of the former Council space. Blue markers showed Allied positions scattered and weak. Green markers represented the growing number of species that had made peace with humanity. The pattern was clear. Humanity was winning not just through military force, but through superior strategy. They offered generous terms to species that surrendered, while crushing those that continued to resist. It was divide and conquer executed with terrifying efficiency. "How many ships do the humans actually have?" Korth asked. Admiral Kessera's crystal body flickered with uncertain yellow light. "Intelligence estimates range from 5,000 to 50,000 vessels. Their construction capacity appears to be enormous, but we cannot locate their shipyards." 50,000 ships, Korth repeated quietly. "How is that possible? 2 years ago, humans had 800 vessels maximum. We believe they've been building their secret fleet for decades, possibly centuries," Kessera explained. "Hidden shipyards in dark nebulae, automated construction facilities in unmapped systems. They may have been preparing for this war since they first joined the Council." The implications were staggering. Humanity had spent 2 centuries pretending to be peaceful, while secretly building the largest military force in galactic history. They had shared their defensive technology freely while keeping their offensive capabilities hidden. It was strategic deception on a scale that defied imagination. A communication alert interrupted Korth's thoughts. The display showed an incoming message from an unknown source. When the transmission opened, Korth found himself looking at a human woman he had not seen for 2 years. Sarah Chen looked different than she had as Earth's ambassador. Gone was the diplomatic clothing and careful expression. Now she wore military dress uniform with insignia that marked her as a high-ranking officer. Her eyes held the cold confidence of someone who held all the advantages. "Elder Korth," Sarah said politely, "I bring greetings from the Free Systems Alliance and a final offer from humanity." "Ambassador Chen," Korth replied formally. "I see you've changed careers." "First Speaker Chen now," she corrected. "Ambassador was a job for peacetime. These days I represent humanity's interests in a more direct fashion." Behind Sarah, Korth could see what looked like a massive military command center. Dozens of humans worked at control stations monitoring star charts that showed the entire galaxy. The scale of the operation was breathtaking. "What is your final offer?" Korth asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Complete surrender of all Council military forces," Sarah replied calmly. "Dissolution of the Council government structure. Recognition of the Free Systems Alliance as the legitimate authority in this region of space. In return, all remaining Council species will be granted autonomy in their home systems and protection under Alliance law." "And if we refuse?" Sarah's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Then we stop playing games and end this war quickly. Your remaining fleets will be destroyed, your homeworlds blockaded, and your species will learn what happens when you threaten human families." The threat was delivered without emotion or anger. That made it more terrifying than any amount of rage would have been. Sarah spoke like someone describing an inevitable natural process. You cannot simply conquer the entire galaxy, Korth protested. The logistics alone are impossible. Elder Korth, Sarah replied patiently, we're not conquering the galaxy. We're liberating it from a government structure that proved itself willing to enslave entire species for the crime of being different. Most of your former member worlds are grateful for the change. That was true, and it infuriated Korth. Human occupation forces had been welcomed as liberators on dozens of worlds. The Alliance offered better trade terms, more advanced technology, and actual representation in government decisions. Many planets were better off under human rule than they had been under the Council. The Council maintained peace for thousands of years, Korth argued weakly. The Council maintained control through threat of force, Sarah corrected. You called it peace because nobody was strong enough to challenge you. But the moment someone refused to obey, you immediately resorted to military threats. That's not peace, that's tyranny. Korth wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Everything Sarah said was accurate. The Council had ruled through superior force, and when that force was challenged, they had immediately attempted to use it to maintain control. What happened to the humans who chose diplomacy and cooperation? Korth asked bitterly. We learned, Sarah replied simply. For 200 years we tried to work within your system. We followed your rules, accepted your limitations, and hoped that patience would eventually earn us equal treatment. Instead, we learned that some people only understand strength. She leaned forward slightly, and her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. You taught us that lesson, Elder Korth. You showed us that in this galaxy the choice is simple. Be strong enough to defend yourself, or be weak enough for others to control. We chose strength. The transmission ended, leaving Korth alone with Admiral Kessera and the weight of impossible decisions. Around them, the Council station hummed with the activity of a government that no longer governed anything meaningful. Your orders, Elder? Kessera asked quietly. Korth stared at the displays showing the reality of their situation. 3 remaining allies, less than 1,000 ships, and an enemy that had already proven capable of destroying them whenever they chose to make the effort. Pride demanded that he fight to the end. Wisdom suggested that surrender might save millions of lives. Leadership required him to choose between his own honor and his people's survival. Send a message to all remaining Council forces, Korth said finally. Stand down and return to home systems. The war is over. Admiral Kessera's crystal body flashed with surprised blue light. Elder? The humans were right about one thing, Korth admitted wearily. We ruled through strength and now they are stronger. The Council is finished. As news of the surrender spread across the galaxy, celebrations began on hundreds of worlds, not because people hated the Council, but because they were tired of war. Humanity had offered something the Council never could, a future based on cooperation rather than dominance. On a fortress world beyond the galactic rim, Sarah Chen stood before a window that showed the construction of massive shipyards and civilian habitats. Millions of humans lived here now, building a civilization that could never again be threatened by those who confused age with wisdom. Her aide approached with the daily reports. First speaker, the last Council forces have surrendered. Elder Korth has formally dissolved the Council government and recognized Alliance authority. Sarah nodded without taking her eyes off the construction projects. Good. Begin the transition protocols for Council worlds. Full representation in the Alliance government, economic assistance for war damage, and integration of their military forces into Alliance defense structures. And the species that resisted to the end? The aide asked. The same terms we offered everyone else, Sarah replied. The war is over. Now we build something better. As she watched human children playing in the gardens below while construction ships built the foundation of a new galactic civilization,